Hello and welcome everyone to our next edition of MTI Live. My name is Nicole and I'm the program director here at MedTech Innovator. Really excited to talk to you guys all today about the D2C pathway. Now in MedTech Innovator, we see companies with many different business models joining the program. A lot of them are selling to hospitals directly, as we talked about in the last webinar, but some of them are actually going after the patients themselves and the consumers. And so in this webinar, we're really going to go over how to turn that consumer curiosity into clinical credibility throughout your business plan process. So, whether you have a startup already that is in the D2C space, or if this is a pathway you're considering going down in the future, we've got four amazing panelists here today that have seen all sorts of different med tech go through these various business models and marketed successfully to each of these. So, between these strategics and startups, we're going to be covering, examples from a lot of diverse clinical areas. So I know a lot of you guys listening, especially those on LinkedIn, may be considering applying for MedTech Innovator and knowing if your technology is a good fit or not. We get this question a lot, in particular from our consumer wellness companies that are wondering, are we MedTech? And really, in our opinion, anything that improves the health of human lives is considered a MedTech innovation. And so really want to emphasize that there are many different forms that this innovation can come in, and targeting those patients or consumers directly in your marketing and sales can have a profound impact on your success. So in this panel, we're going to unpack some common misconceptions around D2C in medtech, and share how startups can use this early consumer traction to open doors later for enterprise B2B models, as well as payers for reimbursement down the line. We're going to discuss how to balance flexibility with the FDA and realities in terms of these reimbursement options as well. So, from testing demand responsibly to crafting investor-ready narratives around a D2C pathway, and pursuing ethical marketing campaigns, we're going to help founders move their products into mainstream adoption. So, keep this information in your back pocket for later innovations as well. If you're not in the D2C space, you're really going to benefit hearing from these experts today. And so, without further ado, I would like to introduce our four incredible panelists that we have joining us. The first is Jason Halleck from Dexcom Ventures. So Jason, welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, Jason Halleck. I'm at Dexcom Ventures, as Nicole had said. I've been at Dexcom for 14 years. My background is in product development. Moved over to co-found the Dexcom Ventures wholly contained corporate venture capital arm about 4 years ago. We invest in things that are strategically relevant for the Dexcom long-term roadmap. We vary a little bit differently than a traditional financial-based venture capital institution, in that we try to provide a lot of value to our portfolio companies and leveraging the Dexcom ecosystem of really smart and capable scientists, regulatory folks, clinical folks, and using our kind of position in the marketplace to help educate and assist our companies.
Thank you so much, Jason. And Jason has been a very strong partner alongside Adam in Dexcom for several years now. And so really excited to have him here. If you guys are interested in joining MedTech Innovator and you have more of a wearables monitoring product, that's a lot of their sweet space. So looking forward to hearing Jason's advice on the strategic perspective on that. And then next up, we have three of our alumni that have been through the MedTech Innovator Accelerator themselves with D2C products, again, in diverse clinical areas. So I think you're going to learn a lot from them. First, we've got Laura from OsteoBoost Health. They were in our 2019 MTI cohort. So welcome, Laura.
Thanks. So I'm Laura Yeases, CEO of OsteoBoost Health. We are the first and only FDA cleared prescription treatment for osteopenia, and the only treatment for low bone density that's FDA cleared that's non-pharmacological. So it's a wearable medical device, precision vibration belt, and we did a gold standard RCT, showed really strong benefits. Based on that, we got an FDA de novo clearance, and we launched the product in May. We've sold a lot of product, so we're off to a good start. And we charge $1,000. People order it directly on our website, and then it's dispensed. Fulfillment is through a pharmacy, an online pharmacy. We offer telehealth. Patients can also get the prescription from their personal physician. We are seeing over, almost 2,000 doctors prescribing. So it's been D2C, but the D2C has been activating a B2B. My background was in tech, so Netscape, Yahoo. I was CEO of two consumer software companies, and then I've been in healthcare for the last 8 years.
Oh, amazing. We're so lucky to have you on, Laura, and I'm glad to have you in the MTI ecosystem now with Osteo Boost. And I think, yeah, your feedback's going to be really helpful, especially around you guys just went through the de novo approval process. So, how that worked into your business strategy moving forward. And, what did you basically need to showcase as part of this for a consumer product? So, really excited to have you here. Next up, we've got Olivier from Somnix Health. They were in our cohort just last year in 2024. Welcome, Olivier.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Great to be here. So, fun fact, actually, Laura and I are in the same building in Redwood City, California. So maybe there's a kind of a concentration of MTI, DTC company there. So I'm the general manager for Somnix. We have a innovative way of treating sleep apnea, like a CPAP replacement device that is really much more patient friendly. And when I joined the company 6 years ago, a few months before our 510(k) clearance here in the US, and the companies out in Taiwan, technologies coming from Stanford University. But before doing anything, I look at the market and I look at the device and I figured out, the best way is really not only to come with a new innovative product, but also a new way for patients to have access to that treatment. And that goes just beyond like a new cool device. It's actually the whole patient journey or experience should be different. And this is how I said, DTC seems to be the way to go in the day and age of Amazon, where people are more used to buying online. And let's say, how can we use that type of expectation from the broader market for a medical device with all the limitation, restriction, and rules that we have to apply for. So we have 1,000 of patients, and then we really make that experience very different from the traditional DME, CPAP type of experience of a patient, and learn a lot from there. And I'd love to share all those experiences today. My background is, believe it or not, I studied as an aerospace engineer. I was part of the team that designed XM radio, then went into semiconductor and a few more industry like security here in Silicon Valley before coming into medical device about 8 years ago. And that's the second company that are specifically in sleep.
Wow. Well, I actually had no idea you're part of the Sirius XM radio team. That's really cool to know. And spot on in that, how do we target to consumers when they're used to this online shopping era, and good transition into Brian, who actually is selling on Amazon with Oslo in their sleep buds, also part of our cohort last year. So both Olivier and Brian were mid-stage finalists, a competition we've got coming up in a few weeks in MedTech Innovator this year now. So excited to see who those finalists are going to be. And yeah, so welcome, Brian. He was also a Best Video Award winner last year. It's amazing. Look it up on YouTube. Oslo MedTech Innovator, you'll find it. And so for those of you in our cohort, if he looks familiar, that's because he spoke in our Best Video webinar at the beginning of the program. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you for having me. Honored to be here. So Brian Mulcahy, I'm one of the three co-founders of Oslo. Company's about 4 years old. A little background just on me before I get to what we do at Oslo. Like Olivier, I started my career as an engineer. I was an electrical engineer. I worked in semiconductor as well and a number of other industries, from Fortune 100, all the way to startups. Over my career since I left MIT to today, I've worked for 9 organizations in 21 different roles. And about half of that career was at Bose Corporation, the big headphone company that makes these kind of headphones. I spent 20 years there, and I started a business. I was the leader of a business there that focused on helping people develop. We developed a new product. It was called the Sleep Bud, tiny little wireless headphone to help people sleep in the presence of noise. At the time, there was no product like this, but it turns out it's a huge problem. And we built a pretty big business at Bose with this product, but due to some strategic shifts, the company decided to exit that business. So with these two co-founders, we spun the business out about 4 years ago and founded Oslo. And what this is a tiny wireless headphone. Here it is in its charging case. This little headphone, you can see it in my ear here. It's designed so you can sleep on it. It's so thin and small that it doesn't stick out and hurt when you put your head in a pillow. And we're getting huge traction. We've been selling this now DTC for over a year. I can talk more about this later in the Q&A in terms of how we launched the company and how we're selling and how we're tracking that. But why we're in MedTech Innovator is because we are pivoting from a consumer product to add a digital health and digital therapeutics solution to a number of different conditions, starting with tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. Affects about 50 million people in the United States, 20 million find it bothersome, and today there's no real cure for it. And we are in the middle of a clinical trial to show that we have efficacy with an audio therapy delivered with this consumer hardware device to treat what is today really an untreatable medical condition. So MTI was really helpful to us in the early stages in helping us, we didn't know what we didn't know, and how to approach that. And we're now executing on a lot of the stuff we learned over the last year and a half with MTI. So super proud to be an alum and super thankful and appreciative of Nicole and the whole awesome team at MTI that taught us a lot.
Oh, thank you so much, Brian. We are so proud to have all three of you guys through the program and to see your progress and how far it's come. My background's in ENT, so always been really impressed by Oslo. I actually have the sleep buds myself. They make great Christmas presents for your parents and anyone who has trouble sleeping in your life. So that's another benefit of D2C is you don't need a prescription necessarily to purchase it. And so in some cases, maybe you do. But yeah, we'll talk about those nuances later and how actually you can use these pathways to get in the hands of more patients, make a bigger impact. So starting off here, thinking of the D2C landscape, one of the things I've been thinking about recently here in Boston is Whoop. So Whoop, if you guys haven't heard of them yet, is a fitness wearable company, do a lot of tracking around heart rate and your temperature, things like that as you're exercising to give insights into your routines and things like that. They recently released a blood pressure insights feature as part of this to sort of estimate your blood pressure as a result of all this biometric data they're collecting. But the FDA has come back and suggested they're overstepping with this feature. And, I think this is, reason why a lot of folks that are in maybe this consumer wellness space are hesitant to call themselves medtech, hesitant to make certain claims around their products. So, want to hear from you guys. And Olivia, we'll start with you. What advice would you give to early stage medtech companies who assume D2C isn't viable because their products are regulated? Is there a way that they can think about, maybe some of these features that are more claim oriented and using this pathway to best access them while responsibly testing demand and integrating these features into their products?
Yes, so I'm not very familiar with the Whoop story, but when we started with that device, it was a class 2 device. So we need prescription, and we had those strong guidelines from the FDA. So any communication, we have to stick to the on-label guidelines. So that's super important. It's just that you cannot use this such device for direct to consumer. It's just a different set of rules. But I think most importantly, the entrepreneur should think about, okay, do I have a device and I am in a market that is favorable for the direct to consumer business model? I think that's a key question. So here's our story here. So when 7 years ago, I was looking at the sleep apnea treatment market, I recognized a duopoly with two major players owning 80% of the market. And usually that's a situation that's very steady, that doesn't allow much competition. Think Coca-Cola and Pepsi or Airbus and Boeing, except that the users were frustrated and, adherence rate was poor. And the two guys who are sitting on the top of that market, well, they had a reimbursed device, that was a CPAP, But I saw all the telltales of a market that's ripe for innovation and maybe disruption. And then I figured out, how do you disrupt such a market? Well, you change the whole patient experience, and usually you go direct to patient with a superior patient experience. Try to foster the word of mouth. Don't try to go against the big guys, but try to build your base of followers and adopters. And this is how I came up with that direct to consumer experience. Direct to consumer through direct marketing with Facebook and Instagram allow you to not only bypass the DME, which was a traditional way to access to the treatment, like the distributor, but also have that conversation and gain a lot of feedback and fine tune your message. With little budget, you can really test your messages, your market. You can test pricing, and then you can get a lot of very, very favorable, feedback from your patient base.
Yeah, super helpful to know, going in as well to this too, you guys were dead set on what are those claims you're going to make and what process you need to go through to make this happen. And clearly, Laura, for you guys in OsteoBoost too, this wasn't a product, you could market and then add claims onto later. This was really, the core of your structure, right? So maybe you want to share some insights too on like the decision for the pathway you guys made with OsteoBoost and how, that D2C aspect played into your overall strategy when you were thinking about the best way to get this out there.
Yeah, so I think it's worth clarifying our terminology a little bit. And by the way, I don't think it's just here that I see these terms getting merged. I view the term D2C as a question of how do you acquire customers? Do you acquire customers by the doctor saying, I want to use this knee implant instead of another knee implant? And that's a B2B, right? You need to sell to the surgeons. And to me, D2C is messaging directly to the patient. There's this solution. You should ask for it. And maybe we'll even help you get it with, a prescription channel. I don't think D2C means class 1 or class 2 or OTC or prescription. And I would suggest we maybe tease this out in our discussion and thinking, because we are class 2, it's prescription, and we're acquiring customers in large part through consumer marketing. And we are not alone in doing this. So there's just an article in, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, but the GLP, the big pharma now is many of them standing up some type of consumer marketing, distribution and prescribing platform. And for years, if you watch TV late at night, you see some really like high-tech medicines for, expensive medicines for rare conditions, maybe not so rare, being advertised. So advertising or messaging to consumers in healthcare is important and growing, and I think growing dramatically. So you could almost think of it as a 2x2 matrix of, is it an OTC versus prescription product? And by the way, you can acquire OTC products, you can market through doctors. So I just met with the CEO of a company that has a UTI prevention supplement. It's OTC, but they have been, their marketing strategy is to get it recommended by urologists and OBGYNs. So I'd suggest mentally, I wish I drew it and shared a screen, almost a 2x2. And I think this consumer marketed prescription part of the quadrant is very rapidly growing. I think Dexcom has products in that space, right? So, okay. But then you asked about claims. And frankly, to me, this is an advantage because you can make disease treatment claims, right? So one of the reasons why we wanted a prescription product is to be able to claim to treat osteopenia. And so we negotiated the claims very purposefully with the FDA. Now, there are OTC people out there who are claiming to treat osteoporosis. Maybe one day in our life we'll go after them or someone else will. But I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about what can we claim, and we can claim to treat osteopenia and to reduce bone loss and osteopenia.
Yeah, I love that framework, Laura. The thinking of two by two. I get so many like prospective companies that are like, well, we're D2C, are we eligible? And you're so right. It really is. That's more of a marketing point that we're making here. And of your products right now, like 2 out of the 3 of them are regulated, have claims approved. Brian is going after that additional market. So when thinking about like products that are purely over the counter and don't have regulated claims around them that they're making, you're totally right that they could be at a disadvantage here. And maybe there is an advantage to pursuing D2C with your regulated product. Jason, would love to hear from you on this more. And, Dexcom's approach, you guys clearly work in a lot of regulated spaces. When do you guys consider, the best actual like marketing consumer model, this other axis that Laura was talking about, when to go D2C versus to selling through hospitals and the providers directly?
Sure. Yeah, so the kind of the history of Dexcom is a little bit the other way around, where we went very regulated prescription device through the clinician ecosystem before going to D2C. But I also want to talk about the loop thing a little bit, just because I think it's good drama in the regulatory space, which you don't get very often, and kind of how it's informing the market. On the first side, Dexcom has kind of, as glucose monitoring and continuous glucose monitoring has become more accessible, and honestly, the products have just gotten a lot better and more consumer friendly. We've been drifting in that direction for a long time, where you make the products easier to use and you treat your patients more and your users more like consumers than you are thinking about them with folks that are managing a disease. So the expectation once Dexcom went to the iPhone, the Apple Watch and Android phones, is that the app acts like what they expect from all the other apps in their phones, and the experience is really a consumer-driven experience. And unfortunately for us, because we're a very regulated and cautious medtech company, we're competing with a distribution of regulated type devices and wearables with auras and again, Apple Watch and other device Whoops up within that category, that have created again like a medical-ish with a consumer focus branded experience that we're now both integrating in and trying to compete with, really, kind of for eyeballs and wellness and metabolic health. On the touching back on just the Whoop drama, I think it's clear what we're seeing now with the agency is they want patient safety, and so they want the devices that are claiming things to do what they say they're going to do. So there's a whole class of the wearables that are under enforcement discretion class 2 that are allowed to market to their intended purpose. Blood pressure is one where the agency has definitely made it clear to anybody that's gone to them for pre-subs or otherwise that they have an opinion here. And I think what we're seeing right now is kind of companies navigating around that enforcement discretion landscape, and also working closely with the FDA to figure out what would be allowed. So we saw with the Apple Watch announcement with the blood pressure insights as like as kind of summary tab. So there's some positives and benefits, I think, for the agency kind of letting everyone know what the rules are and the groundwork in this space is. Anyways, so I think that there's usefulness in both blood pressure for us and glucose monitoring for wearables in general, and using the agency as a tool to like help us navigate space. And the last thing I'll say, I know I'm going on probably long-winded and jumping over the place, but for Dexcom, DTC channel has been great. We did over $100 million ourselves in our first year of Stella, which is our over-the-counter product. But it's not really our first foray into over-the-counter direct consumer marketing. We've been using partners now with Aura, with Signos, with weight loss, and others, many others, that have been marketing glucose monitors direct to consumer. And it's just a great channel, to again provide a premium experience and kind of directed insights.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. That's really helpful insight here. And I like that, you brought up, blood pressure specifically, and that being a type of claim that is regulated. When Laura was talking about this access, from over the counter to prescription, I think maybe even more of a continuum, possibly when you're thinking of different types of claims you could make, like Whoop, for example, like heart rate, like that is totally fine to display. But once you start getting into more like medical indicators, with Oslo as well, like, good sleep, restful night's sleep, you can show customer data from that. But once you start, going into tinnitus, this is a medical condition that you are claiming. And so, Brian, how have you guys sort of like made that distinction in your continuum from non-regulated all the way up to highly regulated, potentially in these medical claims, kind of where you guys draw the line in your advertising and also the data that you need to show for your regulatory path forward for that indication?
So really, it's mostly about claims, right? So we're right now we're not a regulated device, as you said. You can buy it on Amazon today for $350. And we don't make any claims about tinnitus. The claims we make are wellness claims. We help people sleep in the presence of noise, whether you're a shift worker trying to sleep during the day, you're a city dweller where you got noise outside your apartment, or the biggest problem that we really address is helping people sleep next to a partner who snores. Turns out that's a really, really big problem. Awesome. Love to see that. We don't make any claims about tinnitus, but we've had a number of our customers on their reviews tell us, by the way, I have tinnitus and this product actually helps. And we love to see that because it's a good indicator of where we're trying to go. But we can't pile on. We can't retweet those that get kind of feedback because we don't have FDA clearance yet, but we're working on it. But we'll eventually get there and we'll be able to make claims about the conditions we're going to go after. And then that changes everything in terms of what we sell and how we sell it. So today, the key metrics that we have that give us, but basically we're doing D2C to start. We're selling consumer as a way to quickly bootstrap our way to profitability as we fund the development to get to medical, because it takes a lot longer, as you all know, and it's expensive. So we very quickly got to a product that we could sell profitably. And the key metrics that we look at today in consumer are really threefold. One is, I like to think in three, so I'll just give you three metrics that we're looking at today. One is just consumer reviews. I talked about people telling us that they helps with tinnitus, but more importantly, just in general, in the aggregate, what are the consumers? How are they rating this product? You all buy products on Amazon today, and you look at the reviews, and you generally want to buy a product that's highly rated, and you usually above 4 or 4.3, 4.5 stars. And there's a famous quote from Reid Hoffman, is a guy who founded LinkedIn, and he said, "If you're not embarrassed with the launch of your first product, you waited too long." This is more in consumer. And that was true for us. We launched because we're a startup. We needed to run fast and make progress quickly. And our early reviews of the product we started shipping a beta of were not very good. We were embarrassed. The reviews were below 3-star, 2.8, 2.9 star. And we finally got up to like 4.8, 4.9 stars. And that was the key for us to say, you know what, we think we're good enough now to get out of beta and launch this thing for real. That was metric number one, was consumer reviews. Metric number two is just sales, right? Our sales, sort of units and revenue, have continued to climb pretty steadily since our early crowdfunding campaign. I'll talk about that later, into D2C, which has been about a year now. And third is a metric that's really important in consumer, and Laura touched on this, is your customer acquisition cost, or CAC, as the marketing folks call it. This is, is really important, and it can be pretty sizable. You need to put a lot of dollars behind your marketing to get people aware of your product, to drive people to go buy your product, whether it's a consumer product or a medical product, if you're selling it direct to consumers and not going through the providers, which is our approach. So the CAC can, in many cases, exceed your if you're a hardware products company, you can see the cost of the hardware, and you need to get very efficient at your driving your CAC to a profitable level where you're balancing bringing enough customers in, but you can maintain profitability. So a long way Nicole, of answering your question about metrics, it's really around reviews, revenue, and CAC are three big things that can kind of be indicators of success and also um, interest from investors and VCs that are seeing where you're going to see whether the business you have today can scale to that future.
Yeah, it's super helpful insight, Brian. I think will really help frame others' discussions as well as if they are more on that, let's think Laura's spectrum again, like lower on the regulated side of things, more OTC claims type claims versus when they want to start moving, when it's worth it to pursue those claims for more protection, for also potentially reimbursement as well. So I know the topic of our webinar is out of pocket into market, but how can you actually get payers to start covering some of these technologies as well as you're making some of these claims and moving further along in that process. So would love to hear from you maybe next, Laura, on for these regulated products, how do you navigate the FDA requirements while still maintaining the speed and flexibility of your approach to reach customers?
So I had a thought though, just listening to Brian, like if the data is there with the current product for the tinnitus, then you'd have two customers in the family, Brian, also, if in the UC's household. Um, there are examples of products that doctors recommend off-label so much that they never got the approval, right? So, minoxidil pills for hair loss are not don't have an IFU for hair loss. It's only for blood pressure. And I mean, they're selling zillions of that, right? So, you know, if the consumer perception is really strong, you could maybe just have a big enough business with that. I mean, you could never market it on your website, but other people could market it for you. Um, but you asked about regulatory, Nicole, and I think your question was kind of like, how do you go quickly even though you're regulated? And I actually don't have an answer that I don't have a how answer because I don't feel like we were able to go quickly. It was, we had an OTC product that we envisioned. We could have done that in 2020. Now we did some market testing with it and we didn't have the claims, not even the ability to, from a FDA point of view, to make them. We didn't have the data, the bone density data that people wanted. And so no one wanted to spend, right now we're charging 1,000, but no one wanted to spend 300 if they didn't know for sure it would increase their bone density. So, we needed to do the research for ourselves, not just for the FDA. But bone density trials take a long time. Ours took, a few years in COVID. And then the FDA process took 11 months. And we did everything we could to go quickly. Uh, we were breakthrough. In theory, that should have made it fast, but I don't know of a fast way. So now I think we did a good job of knowing what we wanted our claims to be. So at least that process wasn't for naught. That process really set us up well for consumers. But, my background, I didn't say this in the intro, but my background is really more on the commercialization side. And I spent my first 4 years at this company in regulatory and clinical trial management um, and I mean, I'm so happy now that we get to bring this to customers, but it was a long and hard way.
Yeah, and great answer to bring up too that it is so important to define these claims early, get the FDA's perspective on the claims you are trying to make. Ask them for a pre-sub meeting if you think you might need to pursue a 510(k) or de novo as these claims are being made. And the benefits are not just for what you can claim in your marketing to those customers, but like reimbursement, as we'll talk about soon. But Jason, you have more to add to this as well.
Yeah,
So
I was just gonna chime in on some of Brian's stuff and Laura, just if you consumers are a great channel, right? Like we are all consumers, and going D2C has a lot of pluses, but really think about if it's the right channel for your product, I think is the key here. Brian mentioned CAC. I'll throw in the other one, which is LTV to CAC. So what is the lifetime value of your customer versus your customer acquisition cost? That is like make or break for DTC, in my opinion. I was talking to a CEO of a women's health hormone monitoring company that's helping women get pregnant for fertility, so tracking hormones over time to determine when the best time to try to generate a baby. And she said that she was getting killed on CAC because her product worked too well. So a couple months in, a woman would get pregnant and then they would get off the product. And so like things like that, like you can have a tremendous value in your product, but if it just doesn't pencil out from that channel, it doesn't work. The model doesn't work. It breaks. So thinking about again just the entire scope of how you're going to market and generating your business, this is the key of DTC.
yeah, great. Olivia, yeah, love to hear from you.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment to one of the dimension that Brian mentioned was the consumer review. So we had that, I would say, mixed experience with that because we started using like a trust pilot, and because everybody in consumer good is doing that, and all of a sudden you realize that there's no device that works for 100% of the patient. And especially in sleep apnea, it's very difficult to phenotype which patient will do better. And then the patient who actually were giving us a score were the people for whom it was not working. So they were even in their comments, oh, the device is fine, the support was great, but it doesn't work for me. Therefore, I give it a 1 star. So you've got this bias here. So you end up being a total score of like 3.5, which is bad in a Amazon type of setting where, as Brian said, like everybody wants a 4.3, 4.5. And then it was very hard then to get rid of that, stop that. And I have like a mixed feeling about that consumer rating for a medical device that by design doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah. And
Yeah, and they've been trained by Apple in terms of their usability expectation. Yeah, it's tough. I want to go back to this CAC question because we're discussing this a lot internally at the company. So we've mostly put our budget against D2C, and we have a couple dozen endocrinologists who have prescribed already like 40 times. And it's like, huh, that that's pretty interesting, right? If I could get a few more of those, that's maybe cheaper than acquiring all these patients one by one. Now, we don't have so many of those, but you know, how do we find them? I have to say it has caused us a lot more internal debate. And I'm just sort of speaking pretty openly, with this group. I mean, frankly, it's a good problem. It's a good debate.
yeah, totally agree. And I think maybe now time to shift to that other side of the spectrum. So talked about, regulatory, and now let's talk about like actually who we're marketing to and who we're selling to and how reimbursement rolls into that as well. Because Laura and Olivia, you guys were both talking too about like physician referrals, prescriptions for your device and how really that code fits in when, they can potentially get payment from a payer and not pay out of of market as part of their treatment for their condition. And so, yeah, maybe Jason, want to hear from you first about Dexcom and some of the products that you guys are working on that have, a very strong and clear reimbursement pathway. When does the payer get involved in these discussions? And, how do you guys think about the marketing to consumers versus the actual providers that are going to be prescribing it when it is a reimbursed product?
Yeah, so it's something that Dexcom's obviously thought a lot about as we went DTC in different channels. And so our approach was really starting with partners that were selling the devices as a DTC product. So the same device that was a prescription device that was going through the reimbursed channels was getting sold through partners that were using asynchronous telehealth to get prescriptions and get these devices on people. Like Levels Health is a good example there. Like they were one of the early adopters of kind of that approach. But making the device kind of transition into the consumer channel was something that we wanted to make sure was, one, going to provide the experience as we went direct, but two, was differentiated from the product that was getting reimbursed. And so there's several features that are on the consumer app that aren't on although the hardware is pretty much identical. The features on the apps are different. The data refresh rates are different. There's no alerts and alarms that would be useful for like a type 1 diabetic where you're looking at like hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia alerts that you would want to get like woken up or alerted for. So differentiating two products and making sure that there's a kind of the consumer is incentivized to the right value proposition and they're getting the right experience.
Yeah. Super helpful. Laura, I'd love to hear from you on this too. Like what exactly is like the reimbursement pathway that you guys are pursuing and how is it unlocked? Who unlocks it really in this process of prescription and care?
So we are working on that for our company. We are not yet reimbursed with the exception of FSA and HSA, which isn't obviously what patients are really looking for. We have two pathways, one longer term pathway, which is DME, and we're working on our submission for HCPCS code and coverage. And that is very appropriate for us, right, as a home use device. But there is a pathway for us using remote therapeutic monitoring codes. So these are existing codes for respiratory and musculoskeletal, or obviously musculoskeletal, and it provides about $100 a month for the solution. And frankly, the initial design of our product with the connected app was done before RTM was approved. We just felt that that was important for patients. And then once we decide to go down this path, we just frankly tried to make that experience more robust. We acquired a company called Wellen, an osteoporosis exercise program, to improve the solution, the richness of the program. So we are working on standing up a pilot in 3 states in early next year, and then we'll roll that out nationwide. So under it's statutory, anyone in Medicare qualifies for RTM. Commercial coverage is about 50%, Medicaid a little bit less, but given that our product is for older women, Medicare is very useful. So we're working on that. I think it's going to be a big unlock and a big differentiator from the OTC world. There's some whole body vibration platforms and other, supplements and solutions. And by the way, if you look at the supplement space, people will spend a lot of money on OTC products.
Yeah.
I'm kind of blown away by it, but it's reality and it's not unusual. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, and love to later too. We'll chat on marketing a bit and how we position these the claims that you guys can make based on your regulatory path and status on that best to the patients to make them know that this is if it is coming out of pocket money worth spending on this product. And so Brian, would love to hear from you in this too, because similar to OsteoBoost, you guys out of pocket clearly less regulated, but we're seeing all combinations here. We have regulated, not yet reimbursed, not regulated, hopefully reimbursed soon. Or are you guys mostly just going after the ability to make those tinnitus claims officially?
Yeah, great question. And I'll start by just building on where Laura started at the beginning of this webinar, which was, let's define what D2C means. And, there's different ways of defining it. And what we're doing is, I think, a little unusual. So sort of a three-step approach. So today, direct to consumer, wellness claims, no FDA involvement, and we're selling direct to consumer on our own website, Shopify, Amazon, all that. Moving into digital therapeutics, it's a two-step process. So first, as I said, we're doing clinical trials. We're looking to get FDA approval so we can make the claims for that first condition with more to follow. And when we have that claim, we will begin selling this direct to consumer without reimbursement yet. We believe that that is likely to be viable, likely as a subscription with the software to run the hardware. And we've done a fair amount of research and testing to show that that looks like it's going to be viable, particularly because there is a huge problem, not well served today, no good solution. And we think we have one or will have one. So we think people will be willing to pay out of pocket for that. So it's a medical product paid for out of pocket to start on a path to reimbursement. And the reason we're taking that approach is, again, it's speed. So we're starting in consumer wellness as a path to generate the revenue and profit to fund this medical future. And when we have a medical claim we can make, we'll start out of pocket because it's faster on a path to getting reimbursement that allows us to scale further. So it's a three-step approach.
Yeah,
One
and glad it's
side that Brian, I think both, well, I don't know what your price point's going to be, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot for the medical product once it's approved. But if you start with self-pay, that impacts your pricing. So I have had the experience because our product is about $1,000, where I've talked to investors who are used to investing in traditional medical devices reimbursed, and they're like, "Why is it 1,000 and not 4,000?" And that will impact how much it could be later, but it opens up the self-pay at the beginning. So you're starting with self-pay may impact long-term reimbursement levels.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on that. That's exactly what we did. We didn't have all the HIPAA code to have coverage for our innovative device, but from the very beginning when we launched, we had the out-of-pocket, and I price it at the level of a CPAP portable machine that was not reimbursed anyway. So at least I have from the patient point of view a comp. So it was $1,000. But at the same time, I also launched a subscription model that includes all the consumables. So every month or every 3 months, a patient has to buy consumable to keep working. And then I created like a tiered approach. So I started at 1,000, and then I play with the pricing, and I increased to at a certain point 1,400 just to test the elasticity here. And guess what? I didn't lose that much demand at 1,400. And for me, the reason why I went up to 1,400 was first to have some margin to play with a promotion like 4th of July and Black Friday. That's what people are expecting. But also to anchor a price point early on. So when I negotiate the price years later with a payer, I have more margin to play with. But fun fact, now I have a low-tiered subscription model at $58 a month, and the patient can start using the device right away, and they pay for their consumer. $58 is what a lot of patients pay out of pocket for a CPAP even with reimbursement. And I said, look at the numbers. You're not having to deal with the whole reimbursement here, and you have that your treatment. But still, there's a mental shift for people to say, yeah, but you're not reimbursed. So it's not just the pricing; it's also almost the whole mentality about being reimbursed or not. You need to do a lot of things in clarifying what exactly it means and doesn't mean for the patient.
Yeah,
I
really, really good point. As you
patient,
guys yep, go ahead, Laura.
sorry, just I find this is just anecdotally this to be more true for older patients. They have this idea that why isn't it reimbursed? Does that mean because it doesn't work? Right? They're skeptical, but I think this monthly thing that you're doing, Olivier and Brian, I noticed you have a monthly you call it a hardware subscription, um, is a great strategy.
Oh, thank you. We think so too. All right. We're selling a subscription to the hardware today, which is unusual, and we are having pretty significant uptake for people that can't pay out of pocket for $350, but they're willing to pay a couple dozen dollars a month for the hardware. But just real quickly for the future in the med tech, I know Nicole, you want others to cover other topics as well. So just to maybe finish real quick, the value in the medical solution for us is both hardware and software. We'll continue to deliver the therapy with the hardware device. It's a consumer product today. Will continue to be a consumer product, not developed to QMS. The medical solution is the software that sits on the consumer hardware, and we will sell that via subscription. And that's the approach, both out of pocket directly today and then in the future be reimbursed. And we can talk about that a lot more, but I think, Nicole, you probably want to keep moving.
Well, I am curious since you brought up QMS, is there a difference in how you're approaching your QMS strategy? Is, ISO 13485 regulations relevant when you don't, have regulated claims? Is that really the distinction, or how did you guys define that?
I mean, today, no, because the product is consumer. It's not developed to QMS. The approach is pretty similar actually to what Apple did with the Apple Watch, right? With the original AFib detection. So they have an Apple Watch that you can buy today on Amazon. It's a consumer product, not developed to QMS, but they got FDA approval for making AFib claims. They're not charging for it today, but this is the software as a medical device approach, or SAMD, that the FDA has been piloting for a handful of years now. We're going to take that same approach. So we'll sell the same consumer hardware, but the software will be developed with QMS and all of the things that go along with that under the SAMD program with FDA, and that's the approach we're taking.
And the consumer hardware will be the same brand, or will you productize it differently?
Open question. These are some important details we need to figure out moving forward, but likely the same thing. Same product, same hardware, same brand, and what's different is the software.
Can you share data? So years ago, I worked at a company called Checkpoint. So Checkpoint's the largest Israeli software company. They make firewalls, and they acquired a company called Zone Labs, which invented the consumer firewall. And this was the same strategy that Norton took. The firewall that was the consumer product, the core engine was the same as the enterprise endpoint security, just had different deployment and different UI. And they were actually synergistic because you had more nodes out there on the internet looking for attacks and vectors. And so the products benefited from each other.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, glad you guys brought all that up. We've got like 7 minutes here in the live portion, so want to make sure we cover this other axis too of the marketing and who we're marketing to at D2C as compared to B2B hospital sales, and when you can use this hybrid approach as well. And as I'm hearing more from you all about your reimbursement pathways, really is a pathway and maybe even a third axis in the spectrum we've been talking about. That as Laura alluded to in the beginning, we've of course got regulatory story from, our fitness, sleep claims that aren't regulated. And as Christina put in the chat, OTC supplements that Laura talked about not having regulated claims, all the way up to, we talk about Dexcom's products like glucose monitoring. We talk about sleep apnea, things that have very clear medical needs around this, that are impact, like life changing, basically what you're claiming this patient to do. And then sort of that straddling in between as the one axis, reimbursement maybe being a parallel access to this or a perpendicular access, like thinking about, you can pay out of pocket, but at what point can you unlock more sales with these reimbursement models and increase your adoption? As Laura said, sometimes certain patient populations think, oh, it isn't reimbursed, it isn't paid for, maybe it doesn't work, when really it's a separate access entirely, and group of folks you need to pitch to being the payers, and not the FDA as part of that process. But coming back to this third axis now, which is the marketing and who we're selling to, we can have a regulated product, a non-regulated product, reimbursed, non-reimbursed, and both of these could have marketing directed at the consumer. And so, Olivia, I would love to hear from you on Somnix and your marketing strategy, how you've tailored your marketing message to different types of customers. So D2C being those patients directly that are going to be opting to be the one making that decision, to the providers that, have a prescription for it, and are really pushing it as part of their practice.
Yeah, clearly you need a two-pronged approach, because the storytelling would be completely different between what you're telling your patient and the information you give to the provider. So for the patient, we mostly go with Facebook, Instagram, Google. And then the good news about it is you can really focus on patient group that you can, have the criteria about age and gender and geography and incomes by zip code and hobbies. So you can really test that. And usually what we're doing is we're trying to tell patient, we inform them about what we do, how it works, and how it's different from the other. But it's all about showing them what life is without sleep apnea. What life is without, this all the comorbidities that goes with untreated sleep apnea, and and then we did spend a lot of effort on first only to direct to consumer. And then it's funny because we received tons of RX from physician we don't know, we never heard of, but the patient said, "Hey, I've seen that on my Facebook. I want it." 75% of our patients are CPAP failing patient, by the way. So they've been through there, they've been burned by CPAP or other treatment, and then looking for other solution. And so you'll leverage that frustration also in your conversation with your patient. And I'm using conversation because for me, marketing is conversation. It has to go both way, which social media allows you to do. Now, for doctors, it's more the traditional. You go to on conference, you publish on LinkedIn, and then as we go on conference, we build that database of physicians, and then we do a lot of email marketing to those as well. But it's more about clinical data. How do you introduce a treatment to the patient, and how do you follow on the titration of the device, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I love separating that in what they care about as stakeholders as well. And in MTI, one of our key focus areas is defining what your value is for these different stakeholders. So knowing what these providers prioritize when they're thinking about prescribing this to patients, very important part of your messaging strategy ultimately to them as well. Jason, would love to hear from you. What does strategics like Dexcom do really intelligently when marketing their D2C products that startups can learn from?
So I asked our Stello team for some insights. So I'll read some of them, and I think they probably echo some of the sentiment that we're hearing here. So one was the HCPs are part of the story. They're trusted and influential, and referrals from HCPs into these products has really high conversion rates. Two was bulk ordering has been a kind of key growth driver. So through gyms and registered dietitians and other kind of channels, extending your sales force like unofficially, and with these advocates that that are using your device and kind of helping spread your branding has been really helpful. Consumers, marketing works, I guess, is the answer here. But like, we definitely see trends and spikes during social media pushes or influencer marketing where you get mentions and things like that. So people do pay attention to what's kind of going on in kind of the targeted marketing. And then what's the other one? The customer service. So that was another insight is if the customer feels like they can't get a hold of you, they'll find a way on social media or in reviews and other places of putting their feedback in. So really making sure that the customer experience is like number one, to make sure that you're not getting this kind of bleed over of the people complaining into your marketing channels.
That is amazing feedback, and thank you for talking to your team about
Yeah.
some of these tips and tricks. I hope the startups find this helpful. And last thing I kind of wanted to end on here, again coming back to this spectrum on the sales and business side of marketing. There's D2C and then hospitals, but also other B2B and enterprise models that you could think about as part of your sales strategy. And so Brian would love to hear from you. Like, has this been something you guys have thought about, enterprise partnerships, other like B2B approaches? And are there certain early indicators of consumer traction that some of these potential partners have mentioned being interested in before you move toward that sort of partnership?
Yes, is the short answer. The longer answer is we are pursuing a number of those partnerships for all the reasons that you've just said. One that I can disclose publicly, because it's now public, is with Calm, the big meditation and wellness app. They have made a big push into sleep. They have a bunch of specific sleep content. We have a delivery mechanism with our sleep buds to deliver sleep content. Right today, you can stream anything you want to our sleep buds over Bluetooth Low Energy, as well as preloaded content. But we are starting to partner with content companies, among other things, to where it's synergistic and put the content with the delivery. But we're also partnering with a number of different retail partners for distribution, and we are partnering with a number of other hardware companies where the synergies between our product and their product are strong. So that is a big part of our current consumer D2C growth strategy. And then as we get into medical, we'll be doing something similar, but with different partners for different reasons.
Oh, very exciting. Yeah. And Laura, is this something you guys have considered as well as sort of enterprise partnerships or other B2B models?
Yeah, we're definitely in conversation, for instance, with the menopause telehealth companies, right? So if you think about it, they're talking to tens of thousands of patients in our demographic. So we're looking at partnerships there, also concierge medicine. I'd say those are the main ones, but potentially, others in the future. We have very, very early talking to some of the osteoporosis medication companies. They don't have apps. They don't really have much in the way of sort of programming or community. So I think there could be some synergies there.
Great. And then, yeah, thanks, Laura. Finally, Jason, want to hear on the strategic side with Dexcom, when you guys are considering maybe a partnership with a med tech startup, or company that has a product on the market already, what do you really look for? Is it synergy with your existing products? Is it maybe like distribution alignment? And what do these partnerships look like?
Oh, that's a big open-ended question. So it can be a lot of things, honestly. What we're looking for is providing value where we're not. That's like I think the number one thing we're looking for from partners. And so really understanding like a segment of customers that they can really address a need and show real value is what we're looking for in our data partners. We saw really kind of the data partners lead the forefront into both the diabetes use cases as well as the metabolic health wellness applications. And I think we've learned a ton from our partners of just kind of how to access those customers. So yeah, providing real value. And then two, like kind of coming back to like, what we, how we do it, in the sense we have our venture investment venture investing arm that I run. We also have our partners team that is doing data partnerships through an API to get CGM data out. And then lastly, we have our direct integration. So these are like closed loop partners that are doing insulin delivery, and there's a very tight integration and kind of real cross partnership of how we work with these partners to meet the needs of the customers.
Thanks, Jason. Super helpful, and really like knowing how you can plug that gap of what you guys don't offer, I think is important for startups to think about when they're wondering, what they can offer in terms of claims, and if it's worth pursuing these claims, maybe you can fill that gap. So awesome. With that, I think that was a great session so far. And we're going to transition to our cohort Q&A. But for those of you guys who joined us on LinkedIn, really appreciate you all joining us today. Big takeaways, I really took from this, and I hope that you guys did as well, is that, D2C is not, just one categorization of medtech. Medtech is really a spectrum, as Laura alluded to, with, different types of regulatory claims that you might pursue, different types of reimbursement pathways you could think about, and then ultimately your sales strategy. Who do you involve along the way? Are you just marketing to those consumers? Are you involving the physicians as part of this process? And ultimately, are there other organizations, strategics, societies, large enterprise organizations that you can think about to help with marketing and sales to get your product out into the world and ultimately making a positive impact on patient health? So such an important topic. Thank you all so much for joining us today. A huge thank you, Jason, Olivier, Brian, and Laura, for sharing all of your insights. This will be the last MTI Live that I am moderating for this year, but we've got two great joint MTI BTI Lives coming up in our series. In 2 weeks, we've got Higher Ground, Building Teams That Scale, moderated by the amazing Jim West, who leads our BioTools Innovator Program. And then on November 13th, we are going to have Living on the Ledger, so accounting and audits and life science and medtech startups. So please be sure to follow us and join those events. So those will be posted in the coming weeks on our LinkedIn. And